name is Jon Frater. I am coming to you from AetherCon VII. We are talking today for a live industry Q&A with the crew from Shades of Vengeance, which is, I'm looking at their website now. These guys do everything. They do RPGs, they do comic books, they do support materials. They are insane to try and keep in track of. And we've got them here to answer any questions anyone may put up. And I have my own questions, which I'm just going to be randomly spewing out as over the next hour. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
John, why don't you go first?
And now, for a man who needs no introduction, Ed.
I'm Ed Jowett from Shades of Vengeance. I'm the one who talks on all the videos and says that at the beginning of all of the Kickstarter videos. I've been creating tabletop role-playing games for 7 years now. I've also been writing comics with this gentleman here, and I've been doing a lot of sound stuff recently to support some of our games with the other gentleman here. And I will proceed to allow them to introduce themselves because John dropped me in it, as always.
Hi, my name's Leo. I am the head of audio with Shades of Vengeance and a long-time playtester and general dog's body. So I do some ideas bouncing around. I help out at all the conventions. So some of you may have met me if you're UK based. We did an audiobook called Life on Gaia recently. I'm getting to grips with that and getting it into post. And that's what I've been doing so far. But we'll get into more of that later on, I assume.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Lewis, head of comics for Shades of Vengeance, co-writer with Ed on many projects. Let's just get into it.
Okay. Let's get into it by asking a little bit about you guys and your history with your work and how you guys happen to meet each other and get into the company that we now see as the object of discussion today.
So, actually, it's a bit of a funny story. I'd actually already written a version of Era of the Consortium, which was the first game we created. And I was looking for a writer to kind of give me a bit of feedback on it. Maybe help me make a few tweaks. And that's when I ran into John. John felt that probably we were taking the wrong approach. And stated rather forcefully that he felt we were taking the wrong approach.
I said that I used to edit history books in the South for a living. Those were a more engaging read than what I had just read.
The interesting thing that came out of that was the question about how you present something which is a very layered and detailed history, but in a way that's engaging. And what John and I came up with between us was the method that you'll now see in the majority of our tabletop role-playing games today. The timeline entries and then the short stories which really draw you into the world and let you see what people are doing and thinking and feeling during these events which are changing what the world looks like. John and I actually first met on the internet, and we worked together for some months, and then we went out and did a convention together in Canada, didn't we, John?
Yeah. No, I'm kind of curious how you met Leo.
Actually, I think you were there.
Was I?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
probably.
you were the first person who spoke to him.
You were the first person, and I'm going to butcher this, but it was at a convention in London called MCM Comic Con, and I was walking by the stand and I saw some great posters and sci-fi things, and I went, oh, sci-fi. And suddenly John sort of rounds the corner and he goes, hey, buddy, you ever want to create your own game? And then we got to talking. And then I said, oh, actually, I'm a student and I do audio. Could I do a sci-fi drama in your setting? So then I got talking to Ed, and then we exchanged contacts, and I started playtesting, and then we wrote a little piece that I did for my my final year called Hard Castles Havoc. I might be able to share a version of it in the not too distant future, but yeah, and the rest is me just sort of hanging on with cons and more playtesting, and then we did some more audio stuff. That's basically how it happened.
So you guys have been working since then. What's the shared goal of or what's the narrative behind your gaming line? Because it all seems very much interconnected between the various product lines that I've seen, at least on your website.
Yeah, you are right. They are all very interconnected. So there are two main groups of games that we produce. We actually help other people create their games, and we've done so for three people already. And we also create our own games, role-playing games under the era setting,
Banner.
shall we say? Era banner. Thank you. That's a good word. So in the era games, they are actually all interconnected. The worlds are all interconnected, but the way in which they connect up is not necessarily the most obvious thing. At the moment, we're still just putting Easter eggs into different games. So the people who read a lot of our games are beginning to put the pieces together. Eventually, we'll reveal that, but right now they work very well as standalone universes. So, Era the Consortium offers you sci-fi. Era the Empowered offers you superheroes. Era Survival offers you survival horror. And each one of the games is designed to give you more than just a single kind of game within the world. They're designed with the idea in mind that if you want to play a sci-fi game, you might want to play space opera one day, and then the next session or the next campaign, maybe you want to do more like a high-tech dungeon crawl, which a space opera game might not cater for. Usually, you'd have to go out and buy a new game to do that. Say Star Trek and Shadowrun, to take an example. The idea behind Era the Consortium was actually to bring all subgenres of sci-fi into this one game and give you the opportunity, through the long history that we discussed not too long ago, to choose where in the history you go into and then play a different subgenre of game based on where in the history you are. So you can play, exploration if you go sort of nearer the start, encountering alien races. You can play sort of cyberpunk, the line between man and machine. If you're really into Starship Troopers, and I know someone who is, you can do like a bug war thing where you've got insectoid aliens, bent on the destruction of humanity. You can do a Star Wars thing where you're the Resistance and you fight against the Consortium, and so on and so on and so on.
A bug war, you say? Do you have a comic or something based around that idea?
We do, in fact. So what Jon is driving towards here is, we also create comics that grow our worlds. There are a lot of stories to tell within our worlds, and the role-playing games obviously need to focus on the stuff you need to play the role-playing game. But that
the big picture.
Yeah. That means that a lot of the smaller pictures, the smaller stories, can't be told within the role-playing game rulebook and for it to make sense. So Jon and I have worked for some time to create comics within both Era the Consortium and Era the Empowered. And Jon, why don't you tell them a little about that?
Where to start? Leo, pick one out for me.
I'll tell you what to pick. Blue Shift. Go with Blue Shift.
Era the Empowered. Imagine a world that had forgotten it came from Earth. A humanity that was reliving the 80s and 90s, but with 21st century technology at their fingertips. Encompassing in that, there are the heroes, Superman, Batman, etc. What if there was something that came? A villain that could not be defeated, a hunger that couldn't be fed, that when it passed, Bruce Wayne or Clark Kent were still wandering around. There was still the memory of Superman and Batman, but there was no Superman and Batman anymore. In that world, Beth was born, and she grew up to be the superhero known as Blue Shift, a speedster that has her own quirks to her. Ed, that sound about right?
Oh yeah. So,
the funny thing about Jon's monologue was he just put in a bunch of Easter eggs, and I know that because I read the Empowered Rulebook. Anyway.
But Blue Shift is a comic that Jon and I wrote together. It's a project that we enjoyed so much that actually we've been working on a second Blue Shift comic. And there is the first brand new announcement for this Q&A. Blue Shift number 2 is already fairly well underway. I think it's fair to say.
I've seen pages of it.
Yeah. And we are well on the way to getting towards that being done. We're hoping to put that out sometime early in the new year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I have to read
yeah.
the comic to play the game, or play the game and then read the comic just to fill in the holes, or how does that work?
Absolutely.
God,
not.
I hope not.
Both of them are completely standalone. You know, you can read the comic and understand, and it's a superhero comic. It's a good superhero comic. Blue Shift is one of the ones which has received the most positive feedback, I would say, from anyone who's sort of read it, or even the critics who've had a look. But equally, if you read the comic and you read the rulebook, then you get more of the entire picture. And all of this, all of the work that we do is all about, on its own, it's perfectly fine as a little picture. And if that's what you want, if you just want to read a really, really good comic that's well written by, I'm going to credit Jon here, someone with huge, huge amounts of experience in the comic industry, and also some other guy, then it's fine as a standalone comic. But if you want more, then there are other comic lines. There's Penumbra, there's Lacuna, there's Violet, there's
Kazuki,
whose comic just finished on Kickstarter. And then there's also the core rulebook, and all of those things add to this overall picture of what the world is like. So they're both standalone, and together they just give you more.
One of our viewers wants to know, where can we buy these comics?
So there are two answers to that. You can go to our shadesofvengeance.com/store, and just click on the comics. There's a button for comics. You can go there and buy the comics. Or alternatively, some of them are on Comixology. I think Blue Shift is, but Violet
I think so.
Isn't yet. I think.
Not yet. Coming out soon. They just accepted it.
Oh, right, good. Comixology is a bit slow. If you're not a really, really big name, it takes a while for it to get up there. But we are doing our best to get him up there.
Other lines, other things that you guys have worked on that you would like to talk about?
So, obviously, there are all of our games. I mean, there's Era the Consortium, Era Liars, Era the Empowered, Era Survival, Era Silence, Era Hitman, Era Balam, Era the Chosen, all of those, and the Battlecruiser Alamo RPG, which is powered by the Era D10 rule set as well. All of those are already produced or underway, just finishing off the books.
Final touches.
Battlecruiser Alamo, I'm expecting to have done by the end of the year. Era the Chosen is due out by next May, but both of those had very successful Kickstarters. So I would always recommend, if you want to know more about a book and you don't quite get enough from our website, or you don't quite get enough from our YouTube or whatever, and you want to know a little more about the book, you can go and have a check on the Kickstarters, because we write them up very thoroughly on Kickstarter.
Shameless plug time for the rest of the team. If you've got some more questions, so you've looked at our Kickstarters and you've gone, but I want to ask about this. We've just made a Discord, so I'm sure we can find the link for that and send it to y'all.
I'm sure we can post it on the Facebook page when we're done.
Yeah, and we're hanging out there. There's some people that are throwing around nice questions. Ed got a recent mental workout after being asked about the story worlds for Empowered, which was impressive.
That was good fun.
So,
can you share a little bit about that right now?
The guy wanted to know about what is the reasoning behind Aegis. That's the sort of the Justice League or Avengers of the Empowered world. What is the reasoning behind them, not going around just killing people? We talked a lot about, okay, well, you could do that, but effectively as a vigilante organization, which is tolerated to varying degrees depending on where you are and who you're dealing with, if you just went around killing people, the army's response would be send in everyone you've got and blow up any building you think they might be in, because effectively they're just a private group of terrorists. So that's a very good reason for Aegis to be non-lethal, because if they arrest people or get people arrested by the police and then they're put in jail and released, eventually a jury will think, okay, well, this person's now been arrested 5 times by these superheroes. At some point, this isn't just vindictiveness. You actually are doing criminal activity here. So, I mean, it might be a slower process, but, you know, to me, you wouldn't just go around killing people because you wouldn't get away with it long term. I mean, as Jon said, this is a world that's reliving the 80s and 90s, but with 21st century technology. That they're just gonna blow you away.
Do you guys come to your fiction worlds from the role playing aspects first, or the fictional aspects first? And while doing that, are you actually were you thinking about uniting all of your lines in the same basic RPG structure when you were writing them?
So all of our games began as role-playing games, and we built on those worlds and taken advantage of that. And when I initially designed Era of the Consortium, you know, there was no real thought about, you know, additional games that might connect with it. But as I grew that world, as I built Era of the Empowered, or Era of Survival, or Era of the Chosen, and indeed the others, but I made sure that there was a very strong connection between those worlds and a way in which they could one day come together. So I very much approach it from the world building and creative aspect. Now I know that Jon creates it, you know, comes from completely the opposite end of the spectrum. So Jon, would you like to give your opinion on that?
Yeah, which is how I would have answered the question. Is it really depends on the creator. I start with, oh man, sometimes I go all the way down to just the individual character and come up with who they are, and then you have to come up with why, and from there you can unravel a whole universe, a whole history to why the world is the way it is.
See, the strength of that approach, and the two of us working together, which we do on the vast majority of our projects, is that you get my side, which is going, okay, well, here are the sweeping things that must be true in this universe. A, for the role-playing game to actually offer something that's interesting and different and exciting. And B, you know, for the role-playing game and the world to integrate with everything else that we've created. And then you get Jon going, okay, but what does this person, who is going to be a major player within this world and actually change the way it functions and looks, what do they think? What do they do?
This is also why I like being a frequent playtester for our production line, because I get to straddle the bridge and try things out. Although I would have to say creatively, I am team character, but that's probably because I keep talking to myself on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, now's a great time to talk about maybe a bit more detail about Life on Gaia and what it was really all about.
So, Life on Gaia, actually, thank you, Ed. Life on Gaia was a collection of short stories about the post-apocalypse inspired by Era Survival. And we basically just took the time to adapt those to audio. So I would do a bit of narration, I would do some character voices in the middle of those, and we would just work our way through because, again, thanks to our patented character-based perspective storytelling style, you get a lovely range of different viewpoints in a rather bleak apocalypse with different factions, different, lifestyles isn't the word, but, you know, plenty of characters with their own experiences. So I got a chance to bring a lot of different things to life.
And that was really interesting from a character perspective, wasn't it, Leo? Because we got to look... When you're writing, you need to create characters to a certain level of detail. You know, when you're writing a short story that's only ever going to be 1 page long, you're never going to see those characters again. You only need to do a certain level of detail. And when you're doing the voice acting for them, when you're bringing those characters to life and giving them a tone of voice and integrating all of them into a world, there's a lot more work to do and a lot more chance to be creative and build new things within that world.
And it's the little things. It's little things that sort of stack up like a big jigsaw Jenga puzzle. It's, you know, the verbal tics that sort of show. I immediately thought of there's a story, and I believe it was, yes, it's called First Convoy. So anyone who's interested in a lovely, funny mix of, let's say, differences of experience between two characters, that's a good one.
Ooh,
because there's so, you know, there's a lot of ways to show people's age. from how they speak, their sort of outlook on life. There's a couple of times, and I'll be totally honest, it gets very grim in the post-apocalypse. But there's also been times where I've been very surprised.
You'd be there and you'd be sight reading the story and you'd be going, okay, this is going to go really, really bad. It's like, oh, okay, no, that was fine. All right.
Yeah, so that was a lovely little add-on to our character-based stuff there.
What is your process when you come up with game worlds or game ideas or the elements that go into that sort of thing?
I would like to let John answer this, but I'd like to answer first so it doesn't sound like I'm copying him. The answer is that I mean there are occasions where I have just literally poured a lifetime of experience in a genre into a game and made a game world. Era of the Consortium is a brilliant example of exactly that. That came from a lifetime of growing up being a fan of sci-fi. I have read books, I have watched things, I've watched movies, TV series, the lot. I've done it all. And there are bits from absolutely everywhere. You know, anyone who likes sci-fi in general will read Era of the Consortium and think, oh yeah, I can kind of see where that was inspired by. Then there are bits where I was deliberately and sort of noticeably inspired by things. Era Balam was my reaction to having never played Elite Dangerous and never played the Elite Dangerous role-playing game, to hearing that there was an Elite Dangerous role-playing game and what it was about was actually being, having your own fighter and flying off into the universe and exploring. So I created Era Balam, which was my version of that, which was, slightly different story-wise, but, the players play as a squadron of fighters. Each fighter has different abilities. You can build them, you can change them, you can do what you want. So, kind of, I think inspiration comes from all around you. It comes from whatever you see and whatever you want it to be. And I think that often you see something and maybe you don't even know that much about it, as indeed with Elite Dangerous. I fully admit I still know absolutely nothing about Elite Dangerous. But maybe you go, oh, well, I think I can do that. Or even maybe go, I think I can do that better. and that can be where inspiration comes from. So now John can go ahead and repeat, and it'll sound like he's copying me instead of me copying him.
There are two main ways that I usually attack this kind of thing. One is something Ed and I have talked about quite a bit. It's know whose shoulders you're standing on. There are always giants in the industry. There's always touchstones that even people who never read Stephen King still know him as America's boogeyman. Even people that have never seen Star Trek know that it's a massive touchstone of writing science fiction or creating it. Know whose shoulders you're standing on. And then the other way I attack it, Neil Gaiman has an amazing response to somebody asked him once what he thinks of fan fiction. And his response was something along the lines of, I don't know, I've won awards for writing Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe fan fiction, so I guess I'm for it. Many great works of fiction, including nearly Shakespeare's entire library, were created entirely from going, I could do that better. Ed and I were talking about Isaac Asimov. The entire Foundation series was based on the fact that Isaac Asimov saw a play about robots, a word that was invented for the play, and said, I can do that better. So know what inspires you and know whose shoulders you're standing on.
And if you look at some of the stuff in Era Silence, some of the art direction, there are some obvious video game influences there. If you play a lot of video games, it's Shadow of the Colossus and Legend of Zelda. But
thanks, Leo. They were supposed to feel clever when they discovered it on their own.
And they will feel clever because there's more of them.
Ooh, neat cover. I love your covers. Who does your artwork?
So our artwork is done by a small team. It depends from book to book who did them. And actually, I think pretty much every book has been done by a different artist. There is one artist who has worked on every book in one capacity or another. She's either done concept art, or she's done some of the interior art and not other bits, and so on, or she's done the whole thing, as in case of Era Liars. Era Balam, it was Leonardo Arzilla, who did the artwork for Era Balam. He's actually now working with us on a comic. He's doing the Disarmed comic with John and I,
Nice.
which is based in Era the Consortium. And
I had so much fun writing that one.
And it is our love letter to giant mechs.
Which we all need more of.
We all need more giant mechs in our life. We do.
Do you guys ever work with freelancers, or is everything just relatively you guys?
No, actually, the vast majority of our team are freelancers. We have a regular group that we work with, and within that group, we give people the opportunity to do more if they want to, or they can just stick with being a writer. So, for example, one of our proofreaders came to me and said, "Hey, Ed, I'm loving what you're doing. Can I contribute some writing? I'd like to work on Era the Empowered." And I said, "Yeah, sure." She's been proofreading for us for some years now. So I said, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And absolutely, she did. She did a great job. And we've, Hande is now, credited as a writer. She's also doing some proofreading. But yeah, we like to give people an opportunity to work on more than one thing with us. Because, we like we like having a consistent feel. And B, we like giving people the opportunity to grow within their sort of chosen profession.
So I have a shot. Yay!
Any of the interested parties who'd like to work with us, please send an email to...
Oh, seriously, what's the email? Because people will be asking that.
It is on the website, and it's right down at the bottom. It's publishing@shadesofvengeance.com. But if you go to www.shadesofvengeance.com and scroll down to the bottom, you'll find it under Contact Us.
We have about 10 minutes left. Can you guys give me an idea of what is in the future? Obviously, you can't break any NDAs and you can't give away state secrets, but where are your storylines going over the next few years?
Next February is actually Era the Consortium's 5th anniversary. We have something very, very special planned. We are going to be releasing miniatures for Era the Consortium for the first time. Nice. They are intended to be used along with role-playing, and also they are really, really nice miniatures. We've been talking about them for a little while, and we're going to be putting them out probably on Kickstarter, and probably in February, March time. Yeah, that's kind of the big immediate thing that's on my mind. But we've got a lot of other things going on as well. Leo and I are working on a particular audio drama, which is based in Era the Consortium's universe. It's based around, I think it's fair to say, one of the major central characters of the entire universe. And he's vital. And as I was saying, we were talking about characters who changed the world. This guy, definitely one of the ones who changes the world. So keep an eye out for that. We are also working on some of the comics that have already been released. We are having a look at whether we can do some audio versions of those. Maybe looking into some motion comics. We're sort of doing some R&D on what we might do with those. But we've got a great voice acting team. And really, we want to sort of use that enthusiasm, use that team who want to kind of build these worlds and bring them to life. In terms of the comics, we have loads planned as well. I already mentioned Blue Shift number 2. We're also working right now on a Violet number 2. Violet was, I think it's our most popular comic to date. We've just finished Lobo and the Kazuki comic, those are all Era the Empowered comics. I already mentioned earlier as well the Disarmed comic, which is coming for Era the Consortium. We've got a comic that's just about ready to go up on Kickstarter, called it's the third in the Bug War series, called Mobilization. And so that's the comics. And in terms of role-playing games, a lot of people who've been following our news posts already will know that we are working on a game called Era Lost Legend, which is a Final Fantasy inspired game. I've been a fan of the Final Fantasy games for a long time. I've never come across a role-playing game yet that did it in a way that I could enjoy the gameplay in the way that I would a Final Fantasy game. So I've built my own world. Again, I was talking about pouring sort of a lifetime's experience into a game, and this is, again, very much a case. You know, I've played all of the games, and I really, really enjoy them for various different reasons. You know, I've poured the elements in, and I've kind of molded my own world out of those things that are commonly found within those games. And that's really big and exciting. We've got a couple of other games underway where I'm working with other creators. So I'm working with a lovely guy called David Thorne on a game called Era Wonders. At least that's what it's called at the moment. That's really a game. It's set in sort of a Victorian kind of time. And it's about sort of the realization by humans that werewolves and vampires and mages have lived among the human race for a very long time. Humanity's finally realized, and it's about how society changes to adapt to that. I'm also, and last one I'm going to talk about, I'm working on a game called Era Legends with a member of our team. That one is going to get renamed because Lost Legend and Legends, that's not going to work. But that one's going to get renamed at some point. But it's actually kind of a similar concept to the other one, but it's set further back in time. So it's kind of medieval times, and you got the werewolves, you got the vampires, and the mages, and they're all kind of clashing while trying to keep out of humanity's way, and not let humanity realize what's going on. But then, of course, you got the vampire hunters and the mage hunters and so on who are hunting them down. So that creates a nice lot of conflict for you to step into, whether a human or not. You got a lot to kind of deal with.
I'm looking at the chat box here. Will Era Consortium get a card game like Era Survival?
That is a good question. I think the answer to that is a firm maybe. Let's put it this way. Ed is working on a lot of ideas. John wants me to reskin Champion of Earth for Era the Consortium. He said that before. He thinks that will work out really, really well. That's what he was holding up his camera.
So many puns we could make. So many puns we could make. Oh.
We haven't talked about the card games. Era Survival Colony. It's our latest card game. It's our third card game. Champion of Earth, which was a major hit during 2 years ago, and Evil Overlord, which was another major hit a year ago. Both have some expansions now. Champion of Earth is getting a new expansion, which will be coming out next year. So that's ongoing as well. We got a lot of stuff going on.
How about Era the Empowered? Is there a card game for that? Because someone really wants to know.
Era the Empowered, I have some ideas that I am working on, but I'm not quite there yet.
Or a Blue Shift / violent either buddy movie or Mortal Kombat situation?
Is that another question?
That's just something that popped into my head because
that's an interesting little point. There may or may not be something going on right now that has relating to vague superhero team ups, which may or may not include those two. Oh, geez, John, we're rumbled. It is most certainly one or the other, or possibly both.
Oh, possibly both. Fair enough. We've got a couple of minutes left. Parting notes. Anyone you would like anything? You've given all the information about stuff. Here's a question. What would you guys be doing if you were not actually writing and publishing games?
Talking to myself in public instead of in front of a microphone, probably.
You can get away with that now.
I could just wear a Bluetooth headset.
Yes.
And then there we go. Perfect. Disguise. I found a way to do recording on the fly, Ed.
John?
If I was not a writer, what would I be doing? I'd probably go back to working on cell phones for a living.
Fair enough.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm actually a professional project manager, so I work full-time on top of doing all this stuff.
All right.
So I would probably be very, 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 very much more boring than I actually am. And I'm really quite boring.
Way to market. Good optics there, boss.
Well, hey, you want the game creator to be boring, right? You want them to be focused on the world and think about absolutely nothing else. You want them to make sure the world is the best world that they can possibly create and care about absolutely nothing else. So, yeah, boring is good.
Please note that that passion proves he is not boring. So if you do ever get a chance to come to one of our conventions, come and say hello, because it's always fun.
Any last words you guys want to impart to people who might be listening or watching? Or both.
Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and listen to us ramble on about all the cool stuff we have going on. And at the risk of sounding like Leo, come and join our Discord, because, you know, we're there. We're talking, you know, I'm always there to answer questions. The guy I mentioned earlier who asked me a lot about Era of the Empowered and what I thought about the world, I'm there to answer exactly that kind of question. I love talking about the games. I mentioned being boring and thinking about nothing else. See above.
And I hope that those of you that did play our AetherCon sessions had a great time. But if you didn't have a chance and you want to take a closer look at our games and our system, we've got some videos about that on YouTube. And we've also got a actual play podcast for Era the Consortium. So if you want to sort of dig into some of our world there, it's called Stiletto Unit 447CE, and it's on Podbean. If you go and look up Shades of Vengeance, you'll find us there.
It's also on YouTube if you prefer the video as well. But I know
perfect.
a lot of people like the audio on its own, so you can get it from either.
I want to thank every one of you for being here and talking to a nobody like me. It has been an absolute blast. We can tell you guys are having a ball just designing new stuff for people to play with, and that's really what it's all about. And we are done for the day. Have a good day or night, as it may be.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
So long.